Okay. Hello, everybody. How are you on this Tuesday evening or Wednesday morning if you're in Australia? Apologies for those who may have been on about 30 minutes ago. I was live, but my audio wasn't working correctly. So fingers crossed it is now. The joys of doing live. It's always great when you do a recording. That's fine. But then whenever you go live, something's always inevitably going to go wrong. So let's just see if we've got some people joining us for the moment. Let's see. Okay, not yet, but that's okay. So this evening we've got a really great question or a common problem that I find with a lot of clients, and I've certainly experienced it myself. So I want you to picture this. So if you live with somebody, be it a housemate, a relative, a partner, whoever it happens to be, and they bring the food, the one food into the house that you just cannot say no to, that you have it in the house and you just, whenever you see it, you can't help yourself and you eat the entire, like say it's chips, you eat the entire bag of chips, or you see your partner or your housemate bring it in and you're sitting on the couch and you just know it's in the house and you just keep thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it because it's your off-limit food, it's your restricted food, and it can cause all kinds of arguments. And I'm sure if you've been in this situation before, it doesn't make for a very harmonious relationship in the house, but let alone internally for yourself. It can be a really frustrating thing. And I've certainly experienced it many years ago when I was in a state of trying to figure out, you know, foods that I should and should not be having and all of that kind of stuff. It's very frustrating. So this is why this evening I'm going to be talking about how do you navigate this? Do you have a conversation with this person? Do you move house? Do you get separate kitchens? Of course, that isn't an actual solution, but sometimes in your mind you can just be thinking of that, going, oh my God, I just wish they wouldn't bring this food into the house. So I'm going to give you some tips on how you might like to navigate this, and it's going to be a little bit unconventional because my aim for you is that this food no longer becomes something that is off limits or feels like it's controlling you, okay? Because at the end of the day, you're going to be exposed to this food and many others that you might see as being restricted or off limits in many scenarios, not just in your house. So I want to be able to help you deal with this situation no matter where you are. Okay, so let's dive right in. Okay, so I'm sure that if you've been in this situation, you may have already had a conversation with the person that you live with. Maybe you haven't, but that's probably a feasible first step, to have a conversation with the person and say, hey, I have a really big problem with saying no to this food. Could you maybe not bring it into the house? Now, whilst this is a perfectly fine and plausible way to deal with it, it's a very short-term solution. The reason being is that person's a human being. So at some point, they're going to want to eat that food that you don't want to eat, or you're going to be exposed to it at the supermarket, you're going to be exposed to it at social gatherings, or what happens if you have a friend come over or you're hosting something and that particular food or foods are there. So it might be an okay thing short term, but it's not going to work long term. And I'm sure those of you that have tried this and you've said to your significant other, your housemate, your friend, whoever it is that you live with, you've said, look, please don't bring this food into the house, and then they end up doing it. Am I right? It's happened. So here's the way around it. The problem isn't the fact that this person has brought the food into the house. It's the fact that this food is controlling you. You feel completely helpless around it. You can't stop thinking about it. So if we can change that scenario, then all of a sudden it doesn't matter where that food is and where you are. Okay? So I've got 6 steps for you to help you to start to get this food to just be like any other food that you would have in the house. Okay, you with me? All right, so step number 1 is I want you to identify what your trigger or restricted foods are, your off-limit foods. Now, you may have more than one. I'm sure you do. I certainly did back in the dieting days of foods that I would not touch or I couldn't handle being around, that I would overeat. So I want you to write down all the foods, all of them. And I want you to pick one to work on. So when we go through these steps, you're only going to do one at a time, and I'll explain why shortly. So that's step number 1, identify your food. Step number 2 is I want you to identify the pattern. So is there a particular time of day that you eat this food? Is there a particular scenario? So maybe it's as soon as you walk in the door when you come home from work. Maybe it's when the kids are in bed and that's your time to eat this particular food. Or maybe it's on those days when you're particularly tired or when you've had a stressful day. Or maybe it's something you've never really thought about. So that's where this step really takes a little bit of reflecting. And it's an important one to really kind of understand because you want to figure out what is driving some of this behavior. Okay, so that's step number 2 is identifying the pattern. Okay, now step number 3. This is where we start to go a little bit unconventional. I know some of you are going to squirm with this step, but you got to trust me with it. So step number 3 is I want you to go and buy this food. Yeah, you're going to go buy it. But here's the caveat. There's no special trip for this food. There's no special little, just before the shops close that you go and get it. No. You are going to purchase this food as part of your normal grocery shop. So if you go to the shops once a week and you get your weekly food, that's when you're going to buy this food. Because we're going to start to normalize it. It's just food that you purchase. There's no special trip. There's no special, put it up on a pedestal kind of thing. You're just buying it. Okay? So that's step number 3. Step number 4 is when you get home with this food, you are going to put it in a perfectly normal and reasonable place in your pantry. There's no secret little hidden drawer. There's no, secret stash of chocolate somewhere, or there's no getting your housemate to hide it, but you actually really know where the hiding place is. There's none of that. You're going to put it front and center, right next to everything else, right next to your jar of tomato sauce, whatever it is, okay? Because we're going to start to normalize this food. It's got to be a part of your normal everyday so that we can start to get rid of some of this control. Okay, so that's step number 4. Step number 5 is you are going to now start to eat this food freely, without restriction, without limit, but I want you to do it at a time that is different to when you would normally eat. So remember in step number 2, I asked you to reflect and figure out the times that you would usually be eating it, or the scenarios. What is the pattern? You are going to eat this food that is different to that. So if you've identified that you're someone that eats, let's use for example a bag of chips, and it happens to be of an evening whenever the kids have gone to bed, that is your time, that is when you would eat it. I want you to now have those chips middle of the day at a time that isn't then. Okay, if you do happen to feel like eating that food at that time, that is fine. Okay, but I want you to initially start to have this food at a different time frame so that your mind and your body starts to think, there's actually nothing really special about this particular time, and you don't get into that habit. And the reason why I'm saying that it's okay if you feel like having it at that other time after you've tried it at a different time as well is that we want to start to normalize this, that it isn't restricted or off limits at any time of the day, but I want you to try and incorporate a different habit around it. And often when people try this step, they find that normal time when they would like the food, it doesn't really have that enjoyment factor or that drawing in or that real need and craving, because you've kind of already satisfied it through the day. And the sixth and final point, which kind of ties in nicely with point number 5 or step number 5, is to normalize the eating. So have it at other times of the day and at other times with other meals. So for example, often with these foods, we would have it on its own or kind of hidden away, or it's usually on its own and isolated, and it's got its own special little feeling and way that it serves you. But if you can start to have it maybe with your lunch or just as part of a normal snack with other foods, you start to see that it doesn't really have this special, off limits, restricted feeling that it may have previously. Okay, so they're your 6 steps. Now remember, you're only doing that with one food at a time. And if you recall back to writing down a few of those foods, once you feel that food doesn't really have any control over you anymore, then you can go back and do it with another food that you find. But here's the thing, almost always, once you have done this once with one food, all of those other foods that you've written down tend to also lose its power as well. It's like something in your brain goes, hang on a minute, I can actually enjoy these foods at any time and it doesn't really have any power over me. So I find it best to pick those food, or pick the one food that really is like your big kind of really find it difficult to say no. Do that one first, because often you won't even need to tackle any of the others. But if you need to, it may be only one or two after. I don't want you to feel hard on yourself because everybody is different. Now, some common questions that I get with this and some fear around it is, oh my gosh, I'm just going to get the bag of chips and I'm going to eat the whole thing because that's what I do. And I'm going to be honest with you, you probably will. You're probably going to do it the first couple of times because you have been in a restrictive, off-limit mindset with this food. And it's a normal human behavior for when you feel that you can't have something that you want it even more. And it's going to take a little bit for your brain to catch up on that. But here's the thing. Once you follow these steps and once you fully embrace and give yourself permission to eat these foods, you're not going to keep overeating it. It's not going to happen, because why would you? Your brain's going to say, hang on a minute, I can eat this food whenever I like. I don't have to binge and go out of control on it, because if I want to, I can have it tomorrow. So I don't need to try and eat it all in one sitting right now. Like, I don't need to. So this is where we're starting to train our brain and our behavior to see these foods as not being this restrictive, off-limit, fearful thing at all. Okay, so just to recap those 6 steps. First of all, you are going to identify what your trigger food or off-limit food is. You're going to pick one. The second step is to identify the patterns surrounding that food. Number 3 is you're going to go out and buy that food just as part of a normal shop. Number 4, when you bring that food home, you're going to put it front and center in a very normal, very average spot in your house, nothing hidden away. Number 5, you are going to eat that food, give yourself full permission without restriction or off limits at a time that is different to when you would normally eat it. And then the 6th step is that you are going to normalize eating this food. So have it with other foods, be it maybe your lunch, maybe while you're doing other things, so maybe while you're cooking dinner. Kind of incorporate it like it's part of a normal part of life, not something that's hidden away that you're doing on the couch mindlessly eating, or when you're really upset or things like that. I want you to try and normalize this food and not put it up on a pedestal like it has been for you for so long. Okay? So you can still have this conversation with your cohabitant, with your housemate, to try and be respectful. But I can guarantee you that this step, although it can be a little bit out of your comfort zone, it's going to set you up much better long term and going to enable you to have a much more harmonious relationship at home with whoever it is that you live with, and a harmonious relationship with yourself. You're not going to be beating yourself up anymore about that food. You're not going to be obsessing about it. It's not going to have any more control over you anymore. And just remember, you can't control the other people that you live with. You can only control what you do and how you react to your situations. So give this a go. Let me know if it works for you, or if there's any kind of resistance or hesitation, or have you tried something like this before? How did it go? Has this resonated with you in any way? I'd love to hear. So send me a message. Let me know, and I would love to be able to help you out if I can in any way. So thanks again for showing up, and I will see you the same time next week. And next week we are talking about how to make exercise enjoyable and not just about weight loss. So it's a really good topic as well. Okay, I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful evening, wherever you happen to be. And I look forward to chatting to you this time next week. Okay, bye for now.